Well, I think we are online. So welcome everybody. Good evening to the ones who are in Europe, to the second episode of the Nova Insights. And tonight, our guest, our presenter will be Theo de Blic. I think most of you know him. But first, who am I? I'm not Theo de Blic, obviously. I'm much older. My name is Till. Some people may know me. Till Gottbrat, doing the PR for Nova and taking care for the pilots team and doing Facebook. And I have the honor to be the presenter of this show, let's say. To give you a little bit of an idea of what we have in mind with the Nova Insights, like there's not much room to meet each other and flying is limited. So we thought maybe we can give something to the community by with this Nova Insights. It's lectures, it's presentations, workshop, clinic, and everything online. And I mean, we have so many people at Nova who have a lot of experience, have a lot of knowledge, and also in the Nova pilots team. And what we have in mind is just to one side entertain you, and on the other side also just pass on some of the knowledge and some of the experience, but most of all, encourage you to enjoy paragliding, because that's what it's all about. What we will do tonight is like Theo's presentation will be like 35 minutes, he said. And in these 35 minutes, you can ask questions. Like if you are on YouTube, there's if you're logged in, you can have a live chat and there you can ask questions, and then we will take care for the questions. Last week, when Ferdinand Vogel, our test pilot, he held a presentation in German about getting into cross-country flying, and we had so many questions. It was just unbelievable. And I encourage you to ask whatever pops into your mind, and we will try to answer. Something technical, there is like 30-second delay. Theo and me, we are on Zoom, and from Zoom it goes to YouTube, and there's like 30 seconds in between. The question was just unbelievable. So it takes a little bit of time before we get your questions. Okay, now enough talking. Welcome, Theo. Where are you at the moment?
Actually, hi everybody. So currently I'm in the van that Nova rented for me to prepare for the Red Bull X-Alps. So I was in Organia for acro training for the last 3 days, and now I'm back to France. I have a shooting on Monday, and then I go to Austria and Germany. But currently I'm in the van and on a good, hopefully good 4G connection.
sounds very good. So that means, I mean, you were injured like it was like 3 months ago, 4 months ago that you had a bad accident.
So yeah, it was 7 months ago nearly.
Oh, okay. So you're fully fit again?
Yeah, I'm actually at the fittest I have ever been. I was really lucky with my recovery. It was really fast and really efficient. And I trained really hard the beginning of the winter from January to now to be at my fittest. And now I'm really at my fittest ever. So it's quite cool, particularly because I have to run soon 1,000 kilometers. So it's good news.
Well, I hope you will fly more than you run.
Yeah, I hope to.
Okay. Tonight, Theo will speak about reserve parachutes, when and how and why to use them. And I think it's a very, very special topic, because for most of us, it's that thing living somewhere in the bottom of our harness. And many people have actually never seen it because they bought it and went to the paragliding school and they mounted it. And then you have to repack it every half year or every year, depending on which model. You have to pay something for it to get it repacked. And if you're lucky, you will never ever see it in your whole life. Or maybe if you do an SIV. So it's something very special. Like everybody of us has it. If we have to use it, it may save our life, but we hope we will never use it. So it's a very special thing. And I think Theo, as a 3 times Acro World Champion, you probably had to use your reserve every now and then when you were practicing acro. So I think you know what you're talking about. So now you can share your screen and start your presentation.
So yeah, as you said, I used my rescue quite often, and this is actually the main topic about this presentation, is that I used it really often, and I created kind of a lot of experience through the rescue using, and I noticed that many normal pilots and many even acro pilots, but mostly cross-country pilots, don't know anything about rescues. They don't know when to throw it. They don't know the basic knowledge about it. And it's really important, in my opinion, because you might never need it, but the day you need it, it will save your life. So in my opinion, it's super important to know as much as you can on it. So I will, during this presentation, give you examples, give you kind of a tutorial on what to do, and give you also my opinion and share my experiences about throwing rescues, whether it's run rescues or Rogallo rescues. I won't talk about base system canopies because it concerns really a limited amount of people, which are most of them not normal pilots, but only acro pilots, and they probably know already how to use them. So first of all, it's a small presentation for those who do not know me. So I'm Theo de Blic. I live in France. I'm a professional pilot, and I've been a professional pilot for the last 10 years, even 11 years now. I specialize mostly in acro and I can fly. I also do know XC for the Red Bull X-Alps. I won the Acro World Cup 3 times, 2 times in solo, 1 time in synchro, as well as several other competitions. So first of all, to start this presentation, I will first show a video of what I do for those who never saw it, or for those who are interested about acro flying. It should be quite interesting for you. All right, so after this first small presentation about acro flying with the latest Nova glider, the Glitch, so here we will start straight into the subject, which is the rescues. So first of all, I used my rescues 14 times so far. 1 time last year, and then some years none, some years 3 or 4 times a year. It depends. Every time I used it because I thought that I had no way of resolving the situation I was in, and that my only way to survive would be to throw my rescue. So it's a really important matter because many pilots, when they will start to fly, when they will start a flight, they won't ever think about this possibility, and they won't ever think, why would I use my rescue? So this is a really important point. While me, as an acro pilot, and many acro pilots, every time we start flying, every time we start a flight, every time we take off, we think, okay, today I might throw my rescue. So it's kind of puts a big awareness to the situation. And so I really would like to have pilots think about what would be the reason to use the rescue. For example, everyone has its own reason. For example, myself, I have my reason to use the rescue. Like I know that if I am under this certain altitude, I use my rescue immediately after any incident. I know that if I encounter this type of incident, I will use my rescue. For example, if I encountered like 4 twists in a row, I will probably use my rescue straight away. If I encounter like a deep auto rotation twisted, I will use my rescue straight away. But this is all my personal feeling. But I think what's really important for pilots, and particularly normal pilots, is to think about your limits, think about what you are able to accept before using the rescue, and stick to it. And I think it's a really important notion that is not really used by pilots. Most pilots, they take off, they fly, and sometimes they get into an incident, a collapse, a cravat, some twist, and they don't have any idea that they have a rescue. They forgot about it completely, and then they might crash or they might escape somehow. But it's a really important topic. So I really try to push pilots to like to bring awareness to the fact that you need, when you start your paragliding career, to fix your limits. They might evolve, but you need to say, okay, I might use my rescue, and when and why. So for example, I don't know, every time I have a twist, I will throw my rescue straight away. Every time I have a cravat, every time I have an incident which is lower than 200 meters, I will use my rescue. But it's important to think about it and to say, okay, why I use my rescue? Because I passed my limits. And this is a really important notion to me, is every time I reach a certain limit of myself, I need to use a rescue. And I think it's not said enough, it's not told enough to students in school that the rescue is an option. It's possible that it's gonna happen in your paragliding life, hopefully not, but it's possible. And there is no shame in it, and it's gonna be an option. So
and just ask a quick question, Theo. Yeah. There is a saying, you're never too high to throw the reserve. And recently I wrote an article for DHV magazine and also talked to Urs Hari, also another reserve guru. And Urs said you're also never too low to throw the reserve. Would you agree on this?
Sorry, what can you repeat?
There's that saying, you're never too high to throw the reserve. And Urs Hari, who's very, very knowledgeable about reserves, he said, you're also never too low to throw the reserve.
Yeah, that's actually true. There is no limits about altitude. Either you are high, either you are low. If you think you have to throw your rescue, just do it. In my personal experience, you will see later, I have thrown rescues under 60 meters high. So 60 meters is really low. Everyone will tell you that it's too low to throw your reserve. Nonetheless, my rescue opened and I landed safely. If it had not opened, I would have crashed quite badly. So always throw your reserve and think about the rest once you throw it. Okay, it's really important. So about knowing your limits, I have listed here quite a few of the important topics for me, which are decisive into throwing the rescue. So every time I'm low, I throw my rescue. Every time, and it's a really important notion, I'm not sure if I'm high or if I'm low, I throw my rescue. What I mean by that is every time I enter, for example, some kind of incident like a collapse, cravat, twist, and then I'm totally lost, I feel lost and I don't know how high, how low I am, I pull my reserve just in case. Maybe I'm super high, maybe I had a lot of time to react, maybe I'm super low and I didn't have time. In any case, I prefer to be safe under my rescue and have regrets than be crashing onto the ground because I could not really know how high I was. It's really an important matter because many people, many pilots, they will think, oh, I won't throw my reserve because I was high. There is no point about that because maybe you won't have the skills to solve the situation anyway, so better to throw the rescue high. Maybe you will drift around, you will drift for 20 kilometers into a valley and you will land in a tree, which is actually quite safe. Maybe you will land in a shitty place and you will maybe sprain your ankle, but in any case, you will land quite safely. While if you land, for example, in auto rotation, no matter if you land in a tree, in a lake, on a rock, everything, you might be hurt much more than what you would be under the rescue. Another important limit that I fixed to myself is every time I'm lost. So what I mean by that is that every time I have no idea what to do, every time I don't know where I am, or every time I don't understand what's going on, which can happen quite often, particularly in cross-country flying, like you don't really understand the situation, why your glider collapsed, why it has this shape, why you have this cravat, you don't understand what's going on, you have no idea how to solve the situation, then I pull my reserve. Because as soon as I know I have no idea how to solve my situation, I know that I have a 50% chance of having a worse situation that I was in before if I do something. So better to throw my reserve and just wait for it. And then you have a few unsolvable situations. I call them unsolvable because either they are burning a lot of altitude to solve, or they are breaking your glider to solve, or well, they have many bad impacts. So those unsolvable situations are line overs. So basically when a line is passing above the glider, it's a really rare situation, but it happens. Solving a line over takes a lot of altitude, a lot of stall skills, and most of the time it can also damage the wing because the line will slide along the fabric and burn it, so it damages the wing. Multiple twists. which is the most dangerous situation there is in paragliding, because then you lose complete control above from your wing, so you cannot control it anymore, and the wing can shoot, you can fall into the canopy, can enter a rotation. So it's, in my opinion and in my own experience, the most dangerous one. So this is an unsolvable situation. The number of twists depends on people. For me, 5, 6 twists starts to be quite a lot. For some people, it's half a twist. For some people, it's 1 twist. There is no rules about that, but it's just your own limits. Then you have really huge cravats, like more than 50%, which can be problematic if you don't know how to stall. And obviously a broken wing. Most people, when they have a broken wing, they don't throw the rescue because they think, I can land with it. But sometimes I have seen people, like, for example, have a broken wing and somehow the wing is not flying perfectly. They enter the landing field, they are 50 meters high, they enter some thermals, and then the wing just stalls because it do not have its flying abilities anymore. It stalls and they crash, break their back. So I always say, if you have a broken wing, just fly in the right position, pull your rescue and land under the rescue. It's much better. So here are a bit of my own limits. You can set your limits for yourself, but I think it's a really important matter and a really important topic, like to really know your limits. We are doing paragliding, which is supposed to be a dangerous sport. It's not so dangerous, actually, if you take the right precautions. And I think knowing your limits is one of them. Knowing how to use the rescue is another. Yes, Till, you wanted to ask?
Yep, there's a quick question. It says, is it a good idea to throw my rescue if I didn't know what I'm going on, but I'm in a rotor? So
yeah, I mean, a rescue is always a safer option if you are completely lost. If you are completely lost and you get, I don't know, a situation where when you cannot handle it, your skills do not give you the possibility to handle it, it will always be better to throw your rescue. Maybe you are in a rotor, it's really turbulent and so on. Your rescue won't be bothered so much by turbulences. It will create some pitch. Maybe you will land a bit hard, maybe sprain your ankle, but you will be alive and you will be able to tell your family in the next evening what happened to you, probably with a smile. And it's really important, in my opinion.
Okay,
all
thank
right.
you.
So the next one is how to throw your rescue. So before we come to how to throw the rescue, which is a really, really, really important topic, I would like to speak rapidly about the rescue shaming, which happened in the last 20 years. Not so much anymore, but still happens. Many people will consider that if you throw your rescue, it's a sign of failure. It's a sign because you failed, or it's kind of shameful to throw your rescue. For example, they will tell, oh, this guy pulled the rescue and it's kind of shameful and so on. I think it's a really bad thing to say, and it's a really bad current nowadays, that people who throw their rescue, they will tend to be shamed a little bit, while actually they threw their rescue. It's okay, they survived, they're alive, and they are safe. Okay, it's much better, in my opinion, to throw your rescue rather than be hurt. And there is no shame in throw your rescue. In my opinion, there is never shame in admitting your limits and saying, I cannot do this anymore, I'm not skilled enough, I know it's my limit, I pull my rescue. You did a mistake, you were maybe in a place you should not have been, you did a maneuver you should not have done, you did something wrong, for sure. But actually admitting you did something wrong and finding a solution, which is throwing the rescue, is, in my opinion, a really good point. And I would consider a lot higher, in my opinion, a pilot who is able to say, I know my limit, I pull my rescue, rather than a pilot who focuses on, I will survive, I won't throw my rescue because I won't be ashamed by it, and then they crash. Because in my opinion, one pilot is safe, one pilot is unsafe. So this was a quick word about it, because it's something that comes quite often to my ears, like, oh, he pulled his rescue, and many schools teach pilots to not care much about rescues, which is, I think, a big problem in paragliding nowadays, particularly for cross-country pilots. So let's speak about how to throw the rescue. Throwing your rescue is kind of an art. If you are an Acro pilot, it's an art you need to master, because it may happen to you quite often. 14 times to me, 40 times to some others. I know some of them will reach this number. And it's kind of something that you need to prepare. And even if you are not an Acro pilot, sometimes throwing your rescue is something that you need to do really fast. Sometimes every second counts, you know. And if you kind of repeat the process of how to throw a rescue or to use it, you will be able to save a lot of time when the actual thing will happen, the actual process of throwing your rescue will be needed. You will save a lot of time because your brain will not think about it. You will do everything by instinct because you know already how to do it. And that's why quite often, before I used to do it every flight. Now I know it so well that I don't do it anymore so often, but I still do it at least 2 or 3 times a week. I remind myself of how to throw my rescue. I remind myself of all the important things I need to do to throw my rescue. And I know them by heart, and I don't even need to think about it. I know my hands will do them automatically, and it will save me a lot of important seconds. So I will first talk about run rescues and then on how to throw Rogallo rescues. So as you can see, for normal reserves, I have 11 steps, sorry, to throw my rescue. It might seem quite a lot, but actually it's really small steps. I try to really put everything into small steps so that you don't forget anything. All right, so the first steps is every time I want to throw my rescue, I check my altitude. It's kind of a reflex. I need to throw my rescue. I check down to see how high, how low I am. Okay, it's good. It's a good information. It does not matter if you're high or low, but it's a good information to know. I check my box, so where I am, you know, so that more or less I know in what trouble I am, if I am above fields, above trees, or stuff like this. Then I take both my brakes in one hand. Why do I do that? It's a really important one. It's because sometimes you may throw your rescue with some twist and your glider is stalled. If you release all your brakes to pull the rescue, then you fall into the glider and you are in a worse situation than you were before. So to keep control on the wing, I usually take both my brakes in one hand so that I have control. Then I put my handle and then I throw away my rescue. So I always throw my rescue as far away as possible from me so that I have tension in the line so that the rescue opens completely. And one important thing, and one thing I always say, is that it's important to check regularly where your handle is so that you can find it in any situations. In some situations, it's possible that you are not in the same position in your harness that you usually were. For example, you got a big loss of tension in the lines and you are thrown away of your harness and your rescue handle is not in the same place anymore. So except if you have a front container, the rescue handle is always somewhere in between your knee and your butt. So what I always say to people is if you don't find your rescue handle on the first try, put your hand on your knee and slide along to your butt, and the rescue handle should be somewhere in between. So I needed to use this only once in my life, but I was really happy that I had this advice in my head. It's actually an advice from an old acro pilot that gave it to me when I was 12 or 13. And it's, I think, really useful. So I find my handle, I throw my rescue as far as possible. For some high-level cross-country pilots or for some acro pilots, I'm ready to throw my second rescue if I have one. Just in case, I always have the second hand. You know, as soon as I throw the first one, I have the second hand ready to throw the second one. You never know. Then, as soon as I've thrown my rescue, it opened. I checked that the rescue is well open. It's important. Sometimes it might not be well open and you might sink more. So it's quite important. The seventh step is I bring back my wing. So I bring it to me or I release it with a quick release or I stall the wing, okay? Either way, it's to prevent the rescue to be bothered by the wing, to prevent this mirror effect that you sometimes see, which increase the sink rate of a rescue, which is quite big already. We'll speak about it in a moment. So anyway, you have to neutralize your wing. It's a really important topic and many people forget to do it. For example, for myself, I always either stall the wing or bring it back. I don't use quick release, but many people will tell me, it's difficult for me to stall my wing or to bring it back. I never manage, it's too much tension. It's actually quite untrue because some lines have a lot of tension, some lines don't have tensions. So you have to know by heart the lines that have tension and the lines that don't have tension on a paraglider. When you're under the rescue, the A lines and the B lines have a lot of tension, and the C lines and D lines, if you have them, have really little tension. If you have a two-liner, it's the A lines and the B lines. The A lines, lot of tension, the B lines, not so much tension, and the stabilo lines. So you need to know it by heart. Like, for example, if you have colors on your lines, you need to know like yellow is rear risers and red is the front risers, or blue and red are the front risers. And I know them by heart, but on my glider, I know that if I am in trouble, I take yellow lines. Yellow lines are rear risers, it's C or D's. And or I take green. Green is stabilo line. And then I pull. And there is no tension, and I cannot raise my wing like this. Or I take the brakes. And with the brakes, I make hand wraps. If it's too much tension, I cannot pull. I make hand wraps and hand wraps. True, it might burn a little bit my brake lines, but I prefer to burn my brake line and buy a new one for €10 rather than crash at 7 meters per second instead of 5 and be in more trouble. So here's some little tip. As soon as I've brought back my wing, then I stand up. It's really, really important to stand up. A rescue goes for most of them around 5.5 meters per second. Some really good ones go to 4 meters per second, free, but most of them it's 5 meters per second. Imagine it's 5 meters per second is 20K more or less. So imagine riding a bike at 20 kilometers and then you just jump off the bike and sit down for the crash. You know, it's really painful. Or crash at 20 kilometers in a wall. It's gonna be really painful. So it's always really important to stand up to soften the impact with your legs, okay? As my dad always used to say, a broken leg is much easier to fix than a broken back. And he's really true. So he's really wise actually. And so I always try to say, okay, I stand up and in the worst scenario, I will sprain my ankle, but I won't break my back. So that's the 8th point. The 9th point is check your landing. Always check your landing so that you can really know where you're gonna land. Because if you're gonna land on a roof or on a tree or on a grass field, it's different thing you will need to do. For example, on a tree, you will need to grab branches so that you don't fall too hard. On a roof, you will need to try to stay on the roof and not fall off the house. And on the grass field, you will need to stand up to soften the impact with your legs. So it's a different topic every time. So it's important to know where you're gonna land. And then when you are going for land, you need to prepare for landing. Again, you need to stand up, you need to check, because sometimes when we arrive, we say, I'm arriving quite fast. So you kind of shy away from the landing. You need to be strong, you know, and be ready to stand up, okay? And then the 11th point is kind of an optional one, is if you have the time, if you were really high, try to make yourself comfortable. Sometimes you have some line in the helmet that are strangling you. Your glasses are falling around. You have some things that you need to take away to be comfortable. Try to be comfortable. The more comfortable you will be, the more aware of your situation you're gonna be. Because if you are uncomfortable and you focus on lines or on your glasses that are gonna fall off, then you won't focus 100% on your landing, and it's important to focus 100% there. So this is for normal reserves. So now I have some videos about—
Yeah, just hold on, Theo.
Yeah.
We have some questions. May I just interrupt and ask
sure.
these questions? One is from Alexander Korn, and he's asking, did you ever have an incident where your box was not okay? And under which circumstances would you not throw your reserve? So it's actually 2 questions from him.
Yeah, so I was, I think, twice on a not okay box, and I pulled my reserve. I had wrong reserves, and every time I thought I was in a shitty box, I pulled my reserve anyway. And actually, I landed in rocks, I landed in shitty spots, and every time it went quite well. Even today, actually, I saw a rescue in Organia today. The guy was in a really shitty box and he crashed in big rocks. I thought it would be a bad landing, and he came totally okay, and he was completely okay, nothing broken. So even if you are in a shitty box, pull your rescue anyway. To answer the second question, there is no option where I don't pull my rescue. I always pull my rescue. It's something that if you end up in an option where you can't pull your rescue anymore, and you say, oh, it's better I don't pull my rescue, probably you passed a lot of opportunities to pull your rescue way before. And as we say, you are never too high, you are never too low, you are never in too much trouble, and you are never in not enough trouble to pull your rescue. There is always the opportunity to pull the rescue.
Okay. Then there's another question from Mario Senona, and it is, some say it is good to throw the rescue between the legs. Is that a good idea? Or just generally, do you recommend a certain direction where you should throw the reserve?
No, actually, no, there is no, I never heard about that. So in my opinion, the best direction for the reserve is far away from you, on the side, above if you want, but always on the side. If you throw it in between your legs, then your risers and your lines might go in between your legs. The rescue might pass under your legs somewhere. You might end up in a big trouble. In my opinion, the best way is to throw it as far away as possible. Never try to throw your rescue somewhere close to your body. Your lines might entangle with something. It might prevent the rescue from opening. So try to always throw it away, never close to your body, either between your legs or, I don't know, somewhere else.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you.
So we go now to an example of a rescue situation that happened, I think it was 7 years ago, quite a long time. It's a really messy one, so we will watch it 2 times so that you get understand. I will put you first the normal speed version so that you can see how tricky it was. You will see this is where I opened my rescue at 60 meters high, and then I will discuss to you about it. So, as you can see, this one is a really messy rescue. It's hard to get everything on the first video. So I will first explain to you what happened. So basically I was training Twisted Infinity. It was back in 2013 or something. I messed up the exit. So I got a big cravat. I was not really sure how high I was, but I knew I was low. So my first impression was, okay, I'm gonna pull the rescue. I had at this time a base system, so I thought, okay, I pull my base system, but I did not put it right in the harness, so I put it wrongly. So the base system, when I pulled it, so here I pull it, it failed. So as you can see, I will just go back. Yeah, as you can see, the base system is completely stuck. And the glider is not completely released. Only one side is released, the base system is stuck. So it's like I pulled the base system and then I watched my glider and then I saw this big mess that you can see on the picture here. And I said, oh shit, that's a lot of trouble. So you can see here is my hand for my next rescue, so my second rescue. So you can see I just raised my head and watched this, and immediately my hand went to the other rescue, okay? And at this moment, I remember very well seeing this small car here, which seemed really big to me. So I said, okay, I'm really low. And actually I was around 60 meters high at this time. So when I pulled the second rescue, and I said, it won't ever have time to open, but I pulled it anyway. So I pulled the rescue and it opened quite immediately. I still had like, 20 meters to spare. But so it's a really fast situation. It's a lot of things happening. What you want to learn from this experience is that there is no minimum altitude. There is nothing that is too low. There is no situations that do not need a rescue. For example, the situation with this cravat was easy to solve, but because I was low, I did not dare solve it. I was like, okay, I'm too low. I pull my rescue anyway, better safe than sorry. I pulled the rescue, and first of all, I enter with a failed rescue straight away. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. I enter a failed first rescue, and so first thing I do is I look down, and at the same time I pull my other rescue. But it's always pull your other rescue first and think about anything else later. So I look down, pull the other rescue, and as you can see now, I already pulled it, and then the rescue opens. And then I have like, I think it's 4 seconds, something like this. 4 seconds between the rescue opening and the landing. So
do you know how low you were when you opened that rescue, the second one?
The 60 meters. I think the first one is 100 something and the second one is 60. So there is a saying that below 100 meters the rescue won't have time to open. It's obviously wrong because I was way lower than that and it still opens perfectly.
Yeah, there's one question that relates very directly to what you were just saying. from Blubber Browser, he's wondering whether there are certain advantages or disadvantages of a base-mounted, back-mounted, or front-mounted reserve.
There are many different advantages. First of all, a front-mounted reserve, which is the most common for hike and fly, and some schools use a lot of them. They are really nice because you can see them directly, so they are really easy to grab the handle. It's in front of your eyes, and you can pull it with either hands. Okay, so you don't have to bother about the direction. Back mountain reserve, so they are a bit trickier to catch, but they are really easy to pull away because it's usually not a drawer emplacement. Okay, it's an emplacement that opens directly, so it's really easy to pull them once you grab the handle. But you can grab them only with one hand, so you cannot grab, if you have problem, you cannot grab with the second one. So it's a disadvantage. The lower one is mostly more or less the same. The thing is that sometimes the drawer, they are a bit harder to pull from if you don't put your rescue correctly. So you need to really put your rescue correctly inside as it's specified in the manual, so that your rescue slide away as efficiently as possible. And then the base canopies, they have a lot of advantages. Mostly they have a lot of disadvantages if you are in your lines or in your canopy, because then they do not work. And if you use them, you will even increase your troubles. All right, so then we come to steerable reserves. So a lot of people use steerable reserves without any notions on how to use them. They have steerable reserves because we told them it was better, it's flying better, it's good to be able to steer. They have all this notion about it, but they have no idea on how to use them. So I use personally a steerable reserve as a first reserve since this base incident. I always use one, and I kind of came up with a plan of how to use it. So the options are more or less the same. Okay, the first 5 options. So I check my altitude first, check my box, take both brakes in one hand, throw the rescue away from my glider, be prepared to throw the second one. It's mostly the same. But then on the 6th point, it becomes really interesting because a Rogallo rescue, okay, not for the latest generations one, but most of the old Rogallo, they are going into one direction. They are going forward. Even the new generation, which has this system to clip the brake, like the Beamer 3, they are still slightly moving forward. So if your rescue open in one direction, it will fly away to this direction. So imagine you open your rescue, and on the left you have a field, and on the right you have a city, and then you open your rescue, your Rogallo will open direction of the city. Time for you to bring back your wings, stand up, check your landing. Then you have to turn the Rogallo. Too bad, the Rogallo already did 1 kilometer into the city. You turn around, and then you have front wind, and then you just cannot escape the city. While if you had put your Rogallo in the right direction straight away, direction of the fields, then you would have actually the time to prepare and get ready and land in a perfect place. Another good example is if you throw the rescue with a cliff behind you and you have front wind. If the rescue opens direction of the cliff, you have no time to maybe turn around because you are flying backwind, so 20 kilometers backwind plus the rescue. You have no time to really handle anything. While if straight after having thrown your rescue, you kind of direct it to the right direction. That's what I do usually. I direct first and then do everything else. Then I'm easy, you know. I know I have time to do everything else. My rescue is anyway pointing to the right direction. So it's the 6th point, and it's a really important one. It's actually the most important one on steerable reserves. So I pull my rescue, check it's open, and at the same time, I put it in the direction I want to go. Then I bring back my wing or drop it or anything so that I neutralize my wing, because it's really important under Rogallo reserve, if you want to use it correctly, that you neutralize your wing. Even if you stall it, sometimes it's not enough. So it's better to either bring it back or release it. Then I untwist myself under the rescue. One important thing is that quite often Rogallo reserves open with a lot of twists. And interestingly, many people think that you cannot steer a Rogallo reserve with the twist. So sometimes people don't even try steering it because they say, oh, I had 5 or 6 twists on Rogallo, I could not steer it. And when I ask them, but did you try? They say, no, I had a lot of twists. but actually the brakes of a Rogallo are inside the risers, so it's really easy to steer a Rogallo with twist anyway. So it's really important to keep that in mind. Never give up, always try to steer first, and if there is problems, solve them. But first try to steer, it's probably gonna be good for steering. Then you stand up. So a Rogallo reserve come down really slow. I think it's 3 meters per second, sometimes even go to 2.5. So it's half of a round rescue nearly. So it's a much softer landing, but you still need to stand up. You never know where you're gonna land. Then it's as with a round reserve, you prepare for landing, you stand up, you make yourself comfortable. And lastly, don't forget to brake for landing. You have brakes on a Rogallo to soften the landing. Use them, it's good. But if you don't, it's actually no problem at all. Yeah, Till, there is questions, no?
Yeah, but I think first finish the steerable reserves, and then we have a couple of questions.
All right. So there is the question of on the steerable reserve. One really important point is that you need to always land front wind, because back wind, the steerable reserve still go. I think a steerable reserve go around 10 to 20 kilometers maximum. If you have 20 kilometers of wind, you will land at 40 kilometers. So it's much better to land front wind. Another really important point, in my opinion, is the aspect of the glider. So I just spoke about it briefly, but if you stall your wing, you won't be able to untwist yourself. You won't be able to put yourself in the right direction. So it's really important to either release or bring it back, okay? So I'm gonna now go for some video of my experience with steerable reserves. I have two, and first Till has a question, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. Like one is applies to both steerable and non-steerable reserves, which is if you land in strong wind conditions, your reserve is harder to kill than a paraglider,
yeah,
and it may drag you away. And the question is, why do people do not use some kind of a cutaway system to get rid of the reserve, or what would you do or would suggest to do if you land in strong wind conditions?
Well, what happened to me is I never landed in conditions where it was so strong that I was dragged by the rescue, but I know it happened to some friend of mine with crazy wind in rotors with 60, 70 kilometers of wind. With a round reserve, it's quite easy. You take the center line, the apex, and you just try to kill it with this, but still you need a lot of strength. There is no perfect solution in this case. What I do is I try to stand up as fast as possible and run toward my rescue, okay? So I always try to run towards the rescue and try to pull. So with a Rogallo, the brakes, with a round reserve, the apex. So either ones, but there is no perfect solution. One thing I did not mention earlier, which is also really important, when you land with a rescue, try to do the rolling landing that you do in like the army does, the army landing we call it, which is like just crash and roll on the side or roll to some place to soften the impact. It works very well. If I can stay standing up because the impact is soft, I do it, but I never hesitate to roll in to soften the impact. So
okay. And Alex Baker is asking whether you have ever experienced a downplane situation with the Rogallo or generally. Maybe you can explain what a downplane situation is.
The downplane situation is what I was talking about before with the round rescue. It's a mirror effect, okay? It's a Rogallo flying to one direction and the glider flying to the same direction, but totally inflated. One thing you have to know is that a Rogallo flies at a certain speed and the glider also. So it's like having two airplanes flying completely downwards. So basically you are flying really fast downwards. It's a really dangerous situation because then you can land quite hard and quite harshly on your butt on the ground. So it's a situation you need to avoid. I never experienced it personally because I always was able to kill my wing to bring it back. And I think it's a situation which you should not experience. There is always ways to kill your glider. There is always ways to avoid this. For example, if you are really low, you probably don't have the time to have the downplane effect coming in because the rescue opens and you land straight away. And if you have the time for the downplane effect to happen, then you have the time to make your gliders to kill your glider, okay? And that's why I always have bringing your glider in a really early stage of my rescue protocol, actually, so that I am 100% confident that when the grounds come, I have killed my glider.
Okay. And then there's the questions whether you are using quick out carabiners or quick out system or not.
I don't use quick outs. I have no amazing reason why I don't use quick out. The biggest one is that it's not so comfortable to use daily. When you change gliders, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to use a quick out system, and I change always gliders to film some stuff and things. So I don't use quick out personally, and also I never had to use them because I always was able to bring back my glider or to stall it so that it did not interfere with my rescue. I think quick outs are a really good tool, but they need to be used really with a lot of strictness. You need to be really strict in their use. You need to check them before every flight. You need to check that they are well closed. You need to know exactly how they work. You need to have all the tools so that you can open them and so on, so that you don't have to missing some pieces of the quick out when you arrive to take off, and then you try to find an alternative solution and you forget about it or stuff like this. So you need to be really strict in their use. They are a useful tool, but you need to be really strict with them.
Okay. So that means that even you, as a very experienced pilot, you don't use the quick out because you just don't feel comfortable or are not used to it.
Yeah, I don't use them because I don't like to use them a lot. I never say to people use quick out, it's gonna be very good, because in my opinion there are other ways which are as good. But people who are convinced about quick out, I will never say to them don't use quick out, because in my opinion it's a good tool. It's not the right one for me, but it might be the right one for someone else.
Yeah. And then there's a question from Thomas, and he's asking basically the worst case scenario: you've thrown a reserve and the reserve gets stuck in the main wing. Is there anything you can do in that situation?
Yeah. So first thing you can do, if you have two reserve, you pull the other one. No matter what's gonna happen, you pull the other one if you have two. If you have only one, then it's really rare that the rescue stays stuck in the wing. Okay. So what you have to do then is try to control the wing. If the wing is controllable, okay, so if the wing is above your head, if it's controllable, try to control it. If you are not rotation, release everything, try to take all the lines and try to bring back your rescue to you. Don't try to use only one hand, always try to use two hands, okay, so that you can bring back all the lines. By bringing back all the lines, the rescue will for sure open at some point, and if it do not open, you will be able to get it close enough to you so that you can grab it and throw it again. It's really a worst case scenario. It does not happen every time. Most of the time it gets stuck a little bit and opens quite fast afterwards. And it's really rare that the rescue stays stuck so long that you have to do this. But if you have to do it, always do it with two hands and try to bring back as much line as possible. The rescue will open inside the lines, but it's actually no problem.
Okay. And then there's a question from Panagiotis from Greece, I suppose, which is it possible to somehow steer a non-steerable reserve if you are able to reach one of the lines? Can you maybe have some kind of effect to make it move to a certain direction?
There is no way to steer an unsteerable reserve. The only thing you can do is maybe turn around on yourself, but an unsteerable reserve will be blown away by the wind, so you have no way to really steer an unsteerable reserve. So yeah, sorry about that. There are some, I saw some round rescue which were more or less steerable, but it's not nearly as efficient as a Rogallo reserve, for example.
Okay, so you go on, and we keep some of the questions for later.
So now I'm gonna go to some videos about me using steerable reserves. So yeah, come on. All right. So this one is also a quite fast one and quite low one. I have, unfortunately for me, a big tendency to pull low rescues. So it's a really bad thing, and I'm really trying hard to solve it. But yeah, I have a lot of troubles really low quite often. So on this one, I was training with a prototype which was not working back in 2018. And I was really low. It's actually my home spot. I live just on the left side of the screen. So here it is. As before, we watch it one time normal speed and one second time step by step. All right, so this one was also quite a tight one, to be honest. What happened is I was flying this prototype. It was not a perfect glider. I was low. I pulled the trick, so a tumbling. I got a collapse, two collapse actually, and fell straight into the glider, as you can see by my shoes entering the gliders. So you can see my shoes in the glider. And I fell right into the lines. So at this moment, I remember I thought, whoa, you are super low, time to act really fast. I let go of my handle because there was no point of holding it. I was in the lines anyway. Tried to grab my rescue handle, but unfortunately I was not in the same position as before in the harness. So the rescue handle was not exactly where it was supposed to be. So immediately I went to my knee and slid back to my butt, and then I found the rescue handle in between lines. So I tried to entangle them and pull the rescue away immediately. That's why you can see it takes a lot of time for the rescue to open because I'm trying to find it. Okay, and then the rescue open, you can see it flying away just here. So you can see it flying away just here. The rescue open at this moment. As soon as I release it, you can see my hand there, and it opens straight away. Fortunately, I was really fast. So you can see straight away my altitude when it opens is quite low as well. Okay. So then I was under this rescue. I had the Rogallo. Fortunately, I didn't have to bring my glider because, as you can see, it was right with me already. Okay, so immediately I took my brake handles, okay, and tried to, because the wind is going to my back, so I tried to turn around 180 degrees to land in this nice field with front wind. And as you can see, it's quite a nice landing with a Rogallo reserve. It's not so harsh, and it's cool to be precise, actually. So this one of my hottest rescues so far, one of my scariest. And as you can see, it's like it happens low. And I think if I was not already ready in my mind to throw the rescue because I'm ready at every flight, maybe it would have taken me 2 seconds more to pull it and I would have been too low. So I would have been even maybe crashing to the ground. So that's why it's always super important to say every time you have trouble, you know, here it was my limit. I say, oh, I'm low, I'm in the lines, I pull my rescue as fast as I can. And fortunately, it all worked out. So this was the first situation. Thankfully for the Beamer 3, amazing reserves, really, I really love it. So then the second situation for steerable reserve is a more classic one. I was quite high, and this time really high, and I was in Garda. So it was back in 2019, actually. So I was training new tricks in Garda. I failed, and I let you see what happened. All right. So we will watch the end just afterwards. So on this situation, what happened is that I was training some new tricks in Garda. I failed the tricks, so I fall into the lines. And actually, you can see just here on the middle of your screen down below, I have one foot in the line. And actually, when my foot put in contact of the line, it broke the line. So actually, at this moment, I have broken D lines, and I was not aware about it. But so I have a broken D line, and when I want to untwist myself to recover the situation, because I have no D lines anymore, the glider shoots really hard. And at this moment, I entered my limit because I said, oh, I don't know why the glider shot so hard. Normally, it does not shoot this hard. Why does it shoot so hard? And then I fall into the lines again. So I have lines around my head, and I'm like, okay, I don't understand what's going on. I pull the rescue. So I let go of my hand. I try to control the glider with the other hand so that I pull my rescue. Okay. And then I pull my rescue, and the rescue opened perfectly. So then I checked the direction I was, and the rescue, fortunately, I didn't have to steer it anymore because it was in the right direction. So I brought back my wing as good as I can, but the wing was already stopped by the glider, so by the rescue. And so I was good to go. So then, as you can see, okay, I untwist, but this is more of my knowing. As you can see down, I managed to save my sunglasses, which nearly fall off. I'm really proud about that, actually, because it was really expensive pair. So, okay, and then I control the reserve. I spot my landing, which was right here. So I had a lot of altitude to reach it, which was quite comfortable. And I spot my landing and just steer it with this. And here, sorry, it was not what I wanted to show you here. And so, yeah, I steer the landing and I just fly to the landing. It's accelerated. It's more speed than it really is. And I arrive to the landing barely, actually. You can see the glide ratio is not amazing of a Rogallo, but still I arrive barely to the landing.
Yeah,
and
we
I
have
just
exactly, just a quick question, especially here, because there was one question is if you have a steerable reserve and you're over a lake, would you always try to land on the shore or maybe close to the shore in the water?
I always try to land on the shore with a steerable reserve if I can.
Even if you're going to trees or something else, always better than water.
Well, if there is only trees, and actually there is a situation. If there is trees and I have no rescue boat, I go to the trees. If I have a rescue boat and I have choice between lake and rescue boat and trees, I go to the lake, okay, because the rescue boat is there. But yeah, if I have no rescue boat, never go to the lake. It's more dangerous than it is on the ground. And if I have the choice between a rescue boat and the ground, I always choose the ground. And if I don't manage, I go for the rescue boat, for the water, I mean.
And one question that might also happen, particularly on Garda with the strong wind blowing in the afternoon, somebody was asking for a confirmation that if you land with a Rogallo in strong wind conditions, do you actually break it because you do have some kind of influence on it after landing?
You mean, yeah, you can break it. It's better if you break it. The easiest way is just to walk towards the Rogallo and try to pull the lines. Actually, I have the video of the landing right here from outside. So you can see it's, I'm still twisted, so I'm landing a bit backwards, but it's actually no problem. Okay, and you can see I just arrived. It's quite windy. All right. And then I stand up and I just will walk to the wing and neutralize it with the brakes and with the front lines, like A lines, depending on the position of the rescue. But actually, once you landed, you are in less trouble than you were before. So this is the moment where you can relax a little bit, more or less. So, okay. So it's really a lot of things to process, a lot of things about rescues, but there are many. The important points are the following. The ones that you have to remind yourself is that it's important before every flight to imagine the possibility of throwing a rescue. It's important to say, I might use my rescue today. If I'm entering a situation where I might use my rescue, it's important to know the situation, saying, okay, if I don't know what's going on, I pull my rescue. It's important to know your limits. And secondly, it's important to know how to use your rescue. So I really advise everyone to say, okay, I have a round reserve. So to know your rescue, first of all, I have a round reserve. What should I do? And then you repeat this process to yourself until you know it by heart. It's really, really important to do so because otherwise you might do it wrongly. So it's a really important topic.
let me remind you that throwing a rescue can save your life. So I don't know how much you value your life, but when it's my life that is concerned, I value it quite highly. I don't want to die, and I want to take all the precautions I can so that whatever happens to me, I will survive. And so that's why I take all the precautions I can about my rescues. I repack them regularly. I know how to use them. I know which rescue I have, because some people don't even know which rescue they have. So I know which rescue, I know how to use it, I know when to use it, and I know everything there is to know about it, so that if I have to use it, I will use it correctly. And it's really important. And the last and most important point is that you have a rescue, use it no matter what. There is no shame in using it. Actually, there is the opposite of shame. There is a lot of pride to say that you are in trouble and your survival instinct took over and made you survive. You should be proud of yourself by doing so. So this is the end of this presentation. So now we'll take questions from Till, and hopefully it was useful for you. And hopefully for some of you guys, you will think about it, and when you use the rescue, you will use these tips.
I think it was very useful. I also enjoyed it a lot. Thank you, Theo.
My pleasure.
Yeah, right. We do have quite more questions. One is a very interesting one, and I think with you preparing for the X-Alps, it's the question about ultra lightweight reserves. I mean, how small will be the reserve that you will take for the X-Alps, and what are the limitations where you would say that makes sense or does not make sense, and what about the durability, for example, also?
Yeah, so you have to think about something is that myself, I'm a professional pilot, so I don't pay my equipment, so it's free. So for me, the durability is not a problem. I can change equipment as regularly as I want. Okay, so for the X-Alp, I don't take the durability of the rescue into account. The only thing I take is its weight. So for the X-Alp, I have a rescue which is quite small. I think it's 75 kilos top. The sink rate is quite big. It's 5.5. To be honest, I'm a bit scared about this rescue. I think I don't want to have to use it. If I have to use it, I will use it. But the sink rate is quite low. In my opinion, if you are not doing a race like the X-Alp and if you are flying for yourself, it's always better to take something which is 200 grams heavier, but with a lesser sink rate, in my opinion.
And what about the size of the reserve? Like, I mean, these 5.5 meters, as I understand it, that's measured on sea level.
Yeah,
and
it's perfect.
The higher you go, the quicker you will sink. So if you're within the limits of what the manufacturer says that, and you use it, I mean, typically people are flying in the mountains, so you might crash at 2,500. So
so first of all, the measures of the manufacturers are done in perfect conditions. They are done several times to find the right measure. It's kind of a process which is not 100% accurate about rescues. So you always have to take this into consideration. But what I always say is that it's much better to have a rescue which is too big for you, so where you are in the lower weight range rather than in the higher weight range. So it's quite important. Second of all, most of the time, the weight range of the rescues are without gliders in many times. So they take the weight range only of the pilot plus harness and not pilot, harness, and glider. So you have to take this into consideration, but always try to take something which is bigger. It's better if your weight range is 70 kilos, 100 kilos to be 70 kilos than 100 kilos. I will always choose to be in the middle low section rather than the middle high section on a rescue.
Okay. There's one question asking why a lot of French acro pilots are using leg stretchers. And is it? I'm not an acro pilot, so is it only the French who do it, or and does it have any effect on when you throw your reserve?
No, actually, so there are not many acro pilots using it. I'm using it since a while, and a lot of people started using it. but yeah, there is no particular reason. I feel more comfortable, and the pilot who use it this way feel more comfortable. Some other pilots which are not French are using it. It's not compulsory to be French. It's just a comfort position for me. And I never experienced any problem with using the lead stretcher while throwing my reserve. Never ever. Actually, even sometimes it's helped me because it allowed me to stand up better in the harness when the rescue was open instead of sliding down of the harness. Because I had the lead stretcher, I could stand up more comfortably in the harness. So that's it.
Okay. And one question is, if you have a crash and fly into another pilot, what's your recommendation to do then? I mean, it's a very uncomfortable situation for both pilots, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation, but throw the reserve, both of you, as fast as possible. If you crash into someone, throw the reserve and don't wait to see if something else will happen. I think paragliding is really blessed by some kind of gods, because most of the time you see people crashing into each other and escaping, both of them. You see a lot of videos on YouTube of people escaping like a miracle, but it does not happen 100% of the time. So my opinion is throw the rescue straight away. And if you are the pilot who glide away unscattered, then that's perfect for you. You glide away, maybe you are under the rescue, but at least you are safe. And if you are the pilots who stay together, at least you have 2 rescues, and your impact will be much softer than if you have only 1 rescue for 2 pilots or no rescues.
Yeah, thank you. If you have used your reserve and have landed, do you check your reserve? How do you check it? Do you repack it immediately?
So normally there is no limited amount of pull you can do on a reserve. It's more of a age duration. In France, we know say 10 years for the rescue. It's it's a measurement which is totally not unofficial, and it's definitely not accurate. What I say is, every time I use my reserve, I check there is no damage, so damaged lines, damaged fabric. If there is damaged fabric, I always go to a certified to my manufacturer of the rescue to say, what should I do? Is it possible to repair it? Is it not possible to repair it? Or if I have damaged lines, I ask some professionals to repair them or to change them. I never take any risks on the state of my rescues. Okay, if I have any doubt about damage or stuff like this, I always either take a new one or repair it by a professional. As I said, it's your last step when you're in trouble. So if you don't use a rescue, you might die. So I don't want to take any risk with that. For example, I always prefer to buy brand new rescues rather than second-hand ones. I always try to buy better rescues rather than cheap ones. You know, I don't put limit in terms of pricing, in terms of reparation to my rescues, because first of all, it's not so expensive. And second of all, it's your last defense against big trouble. So I don't want to take any risks considering that. And then about repacking, I usually repack my rescue straight away after I checked that it's in good conditions.
You just said you prefer to buy the better or even more expensive one. In Germany, there's if you have a beer with your buddies, there's often discussions about fabrics and lines, that fabrics that may get wet and that after that the porosity gets really bad, or that there are lines that either shrink or lengthen quite considerably, so that the trim of the reserve is not okay anymore. Is there a big difference between the cheaper ones and more expensive ones? And no, is there different fabrics and different lines?
It's not about the conception. It's more about, on the internet, the really cheap rescues are usually really old rescues that people bought for really cheap and that they used for 15 years, never repacked, and then they sell it really cheap. So it's more this consideration rather than the quality of the rescue in itself. And then considering the durability of the rescue. So for example, myself, I have 8 rescues total. I have 2 in my acro gear, which I use regularly, 1 in my cross-country gear, okay? And then all the other rescues are my competition rescues, because acro competition are above water. And so these are rescues that I put to water regularly because I don't manage to land in the raft. And so my rescues are wet. These rescues I use only in competition because in competition we are above water, and the sink rate when you crash into water is not as important as above the ground. And I use them because I noticed that my rescues really don't sink the same after several water landing. So the fabric is different, it feels different. And when I use them above water, I really noticed that the sinking was much heavier. So if your rescue was wet, particularly in salty water and everything, wash it, check it by a professional, and feel free to change it, in my opinion.
Okay. And then an interesting question is, what do you think about flying without a reserve? Like many people who do like early morning or late evening hike and fly, and they said, yeah, I don't need it. Do you ever do this? Do you ever fly without a helmet?
So yes, this is a complicated topic, and it's more a topic about personal responsibility. So for example, when I do hike and fly, many times I don't use a reserve, but I don't say I don't advertise the fact that I don't use a reserve. I'm not saying it's a good thing. In my opinion, it's not a good thing. It's a personal responsibility. So when I fly without a reserve, I know I won't take risks, and I consider my skills enough. And if something happens to me, then I will feel really stupid, to be honest. And I think everyone should fly with a reserve, even in hike and fly. But when you search for the lightest gear and everything, you tend to be tempted to not fly with a reserve. And then it's your own decision and your own responsibility. And then it influences a lot the way you are flying, because you won't take any risks and so on. But it's your decision. I think it's always better to fly with a reserve. I myself don't do it all the time in hike and fly, and I take the responsibility. But I'm not saying if you are a beginner, don't fly with a reserve hike and fly. For example, my girlfriend is always flying with a reserve when we go for hike and fly, and I ask her to put a reserve. And on myself, I consider my skills enough, and maybe I'm wrong, to fly without a reserve on hike and fly. But it's a really tricky question.
Yeah, I'm flying since how old are you, Theo?
27.
So I'm flying since 36 years now.
Yeah, a bit more than I was.
And I always fly with a reserve.
Yeah,
I'm not as skilled as you are, and for me there's no question. I always fly with a reserve, and even if it's a bit heavier and if I walk up more slowly at hike and fly, there's no question. Always fly with a reserve.
So
but as you say, it's everybody's choice.
And I think it's really good to always fly with a reserve. And in my opinion, it's really the smart things to do.
There's a couple of questions that go into a similar direction, which is the advantages of a non-steerable reserve and Rogallo or other steerable reserves. What are the benefits and what are the disadvantages? And would you recommend a certain concept for a certain kind of pilot?
Yeah. So a non-steerable reserve offer as a main advantage that it's a no-brainer. Okay, you don't need any skills to use it. You don't need to think about it. You throw it, it opens perfectly 100% of the time, and you don't have to do anything. So it's like, I don't want to think about it. I throw my rescue, it opens, and then I will land, and that's it. Okay, this is, in my opinion, its most important advantage, because then everyone can use it without troubling itself about using it and everything. On the other one, a steerable reserve, you need to be able to control it. You need to be able to steer it. You need to be able to 100% be sure that you will be able to neutralize your glider, either bringing it back or releasing it. You have a lot of things you need to be aware of when you use a steerable reserve. So in my opinion, for beginners, steerable reserves are not the best, because when they enter into a critical situation, they don't have the awareness. They have the stress, they are scared, and they won't be aware enough to use a steerable reserve, while a normal reserve won't ask them to be aware of anything. They just have to throw it, and then that's it. Okay, they need to stand up, and that's finished. So in my opinion, steerable reserves are more addressed to people who are more aware, who are more comfortable with difficult situations. And another point is that I will always prefer to have a steerable reserve and a normal reserve. For example, for high-level cross-country pilot who fly with two reserves now, it's always better to have a steerable reserve and a round reserves, because sometimes you might be really low and throwing the steerable reserves might be more complicated than throwing the round reserve when you have nothing to do. So it's always better to have two different type of reserve for two different type of situations, in my opinion. But if you have to choose only one, if you are a beginner, choose a round reserves. If you are confident in your ability to keep calm and you are confident in your ability to act correctly when you throw the reserve, choose a steerable reserve.
Okay, thank you. One of the spectators is asking, especially about a Rogallo. He said that he heard from Pal Takac that Pal recommends if you use a Rogallo, that you should actually use it in an SIV to see how it works, because it demands more from the pilot. Would you say that it is a good idea before actually flying with a Rogallo, like real flying? Throw it in or deploy it in an SIV?
I think it's always really good to use a reserve in a normal situation before using it in a stressful environment. So if you have the opportunity in SIVs to use your reserve and to use your reserve to try it and to know the feeling, to not be surprised the day you will have to use it, I think it's a really good option to try it on before.
Okay. And now about non-steerable reserves, they are really the old round-shaped ones, like from the old days of parachuting. And then we have all kinds of
square,
3 corners, square, 5 corners, the pentagon, and more corners. Is there a difference between the different concepts? Do you recommend anything?
Yeah, so they probably have a big difference in between each concept. The main thing I noticed is that the square ones, the diamond shaped one, and everything which is not a round rescue, first of all, have a less tendency of pitching when you're under the rescue, and they open in a bigger variety of situations. For example, when the rescue is in the lines, a square rescue always open quite better than a round rescue. So I think personally, I use a square rescue as my second rescue after my steerable rescue, and I think it's a really good option nowadays. I think it's an improvement to the round rescues.
Okay. And if somebody wants to buy a new reserve, what criteria shall he or she use to decide which is the right one? Difficult question, I know.
Yeah, it's complicated. In my opinion, what's important when you choose a reserve is the sink rate first. So how fast is the sink rate? You know, how fast are you gonna go down with the rescue? So always choose the right sink rate. Everything which is 5.5 is really bad, and try to find something which is less than 5.5. And then I would say the size, so find the right size for you. As I said, middle low rather than middle high. And otherwise, there is a lot of good rescues nowadays. Square ones are really good. You have to find the perfect balance between the weight you want, the type of harness you have with the type of container, and so on.
Okay, thank you. I mean, now we have already more than an hour. It's already, am I right? 1 hour, 20 minutes, which is quite a bit. That means there was a lot of interest, and I think it's kind of enough, even though there's still some unanswered questions. But we will copy all these questions and try to make sure to answer them. And I hope nobody is angry with us if we say at a certain time it's enough. For me, it was really interesting, and I think even though the topic reserves is something which is very, let's say, uncomfortable. Like I never had to use it. I only threw it in SIVs, and I hope it stays like this. It is something that we should think about. So I think that's actually probably the most important thing, right?
Yeah, it's really something that nobody wants to think about it because it means they are in trouble. But at the same time, it's something you have to be aware of. It's something you have to be open to, because it might be the difference between life and death. And it's a really big difference at the end.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Theo. Thank you to all the spectators for your for your interest. We hope you enjoyed it. And I would like to announce already the next Nova Insight, which will be next week on Tuesday this time. It's not on Thursday. Next week will be on Tuesday, also at 7:30 p.m. And we will have Philip Medicos, our head of design. And he will talk about what an X-Alps wing, like the Xenon, X-Alps two-liner, super light, high-performance two-liner, a school glider, and an acro glider. What do they have in common? And what makes them different? So it will be, it will be very interesting generally about wing design. And so that will be next week at 7:30 on Tuesday. And if you want to be informed about the generally about the Nova Insights, you can either subscribe on YouTube or you can follow us on Facebook. We will announce everything. And you are very, very welcome to ask questions and also suggest topics that might be of interest to you, because we really think like with the situation now, with some schools are not allowed to give courses, and you don't meet friends. So we hope to give something to the community by just spreading information and experiences like Theo. And so yeah, let's stay in touch, and please let us know what you are interested in, and we will do our best to answer your questions. And this episode of Nova Insights will be visible on YouTube, so you don't need to be afraid if you've missed it. You can, if you liked it, you can also tell your friends that it was nice. So thanks everybody. Thank for you. Theo, most of all, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.